The federal government is under fire after a man with ties to a designated terrorist group was able to land in Canada. On Tuesday, a senior Iranian soccer official linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was turned away only after landing at Toronto's Pearson Airport. But the official was reportedly granted a visa to enter Canada for a pre-FIFA World Cup gathering in Vancouver.
Did you sign or know about this visa, yes or no?
I certainly did not sign any documents.
Did you know about the visa, yes or no?
Again, no IRGC member has been admitted to Canada. We will not comment on individual cases. I did not know about the decision. What I can tell you is that the individual, the document was annulled prior to the individual landing in any Canadian territory.
All right, our Reporter Roundtable is here, and we're going to start with that issue. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Mia Rabson is the Deputy Parliamentary Bureau Chief at the Canadian Press. And Joël Denis Bellavance is the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for La Presse. Bob, look, there's a lot of things we still don't know about the IRGC, but when you see a minister or committee dealing with the almost arrival of a designated terrorist commander in the country, when they fall back on privacy, process, and the passive voice, it's usually a sign of some trouble.
Yeah, look, she's a classic example of what's going to happen in July if there's a cabinet shuffle, because she won't be in cabinet anymore because she's incompetent. And we've seen this, her performance, very poor performances in House of Commons committees over the last year. And today was a prime example of why not you, look, there was a major screw up, come out and say, we made a mistake. Somebody approved him to come. We found out when he was in the air, and we revoked the visa so he wouldn't be allowed in the country. We're going to take steps to make sure this doesn't happen. End of story.
Yes. But instead, Mia, what we got was the minister at committee saying, I am accountable but not responsible, which is something I'm still parsing. She says she wasn't aware of it, but then it got canceled. But she said it in the passive voice, it was annulled. So who canceled it? If you didn't know about it, did you what happened here? The chain of custody and the decisions is totally blank.
Well, and I find it interesting that they're falling back on privacy to a point, because they'll say, I can't talk about an individual case, and then in the next breath they'll say, but the individual wasn't admitted. So they are talking a little bit about it because they know that this is a problem for them, and they're providing some information. But to Bob's point, if they need this story to go away, if they want to just sort of explain what happened. So clearly someone approved it, guy gets in the air, someone finds out about it. No, we're not going to let this happen. He lands at Pearson, he's turned around. This shouldn't be a complicated thing to discuss. And for the government, it just looks terrible for them. I mean, they're talking about a terrorist entity and they're hiding behind privacy for an organization they say are terrorists. So it's not a good look for them overall. But it is also indicative. This government's ability to communicate has been a struggle from the beginning, and this is a sign that has not gotten any better.
So JD, on that, right? I get there are times when a government is in a position where an individual case, usually a sympathetic case of someone hard done by, didn't qualify for something, and they cannot talk about it because of privacy concerns. I get the unfairness of that dynamic. This was a commander in the IRGC, not a conscript at the entry level, someone who went through the ranks, and they had to know. And even if the bureaucracy made the decision, there has to be a note to the political side of the department to say, this is what is happening here.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find many Canadians, being sympathetic to the privacy of that high commander of a terrorist group, and I don't think you will find also any sympathy in Washington. If that is making headlines in Washington, we're going to maybe feel the brunt out of this. Fentanyl will be a little issue with Washington if they know that this guy almost came to Canada. And the context is a bit bizarre too, because we just announced this week 145 million to ensure security of those events, FIFA and all that. Maybe we should increase the budget. But in the case of the minister, this is another poor performance on the part of that minister. And I'm sure that the opposition parties, especially the Conservative Party, will feel that there is some blood there. So I expect the Conservative Party to focus on her next week again, or tomorrow, if she's in the House of Commons, demanding something, some kind of accountability, because what she said today in committee. As you mentioned, you're still parsing the difference between accountable and responsible. I'll do that also tonight, but it surely is not going being a convincing argument to put forward in front of those criticisms.
Let me know if it works better in French, because it may. Sometimes there's a language divide. But, Bob, on privacy, often in these cases, the privacy shield is to not explain the reasoning why a decision was made. We know why this was made, because it's the IRGC. So we know the outcome, and we know the reason for the outcome. What they're not telling us is the things that could be potentially embarrassing on how it led to this thing happening.
Yeah, look, privacy is a bogus argument. Just come out and tell Canadians, this is what happened. It shouldn't have happened. We apologize, and we're making steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. This story goes away. But you saw her pathetic performance in committee today, and, to your point, they're really bad with comms, but it's worse when you got a minister who's incompetent.
Yeah, well, like you would see more sure-footed ministers handling this a little bit better, right? I guess. I mean, this feels like, I don't know, a bureaucratic decision that was made in isolation from the political reality, right? Is what it feels like without knowing 100%. But that's when the minister's got to kind of clean it up, right?
And I think that might be where, when she says she's accountable but not responsible, she's saying, well, I'm not responsible for making the decision. I'm accountable because I am the minister, and ultimately the buck stops with me. But who is responsible then? Mm-hmm. Who made this decision? How did this decision get made? And how are we supposed to trust it's not going to happen again if we don't know how it was made in the first place? To Michelle Rempel-Garner's point, a simple Google search probably would have found that this person would not be admissible to Canada. Someone, I think, clearly made a decision despite that they would come in. Maybe there was because it's FIFA and the World Cup, who knows? But without knowing how the decision got made, there is no confidence that this won't happen again. And that's the problem for this government, and for any government. You need to explain. You can't just promise. Clearly, in this situation, it still happened. So how do we trust that it's not going to happen?
Well, JD, just as a final point on this issue before we move on, this is one of the challenges of co-hosting a big event like this, especially when one of the partners, the leader of that country, is the recipient of the FIFA Peace Prize. You want to facilitate the arrival of everybody to take part in these things, and international sport doesn't have clean hands all the time. This is what we're looking at.
I like what you just said. 3 host countries trying to coordinate security measures to make sure that this kind of stuff does not happen. It's pretty problematic, and I'm not sure that Canada, at the end of the day, will find that it was worth it hosting the FIFA Cup because of the costs associated with security and also the kind of bad publicity that we're getting out of this.
I will add, though, that although Iran's first games are not in Canada, as soon as Iran was confirmed as a team, it should have been something that the Immigration Department was talking about, because at some point it's possible that Iran will have a game here. What does that mean? What rules? That should have been a plan in place as soon as that knowledge was there, and it doesn't seem to have been.
And making sure that they don't bring people in that can go and spy on and harass members of the Iranian community.
Exactly.
Weren't we supposed to play a friendly with Iran? Was it Iran?
Yes, and that did get canceled.
Right? So, there's the recent experience that the Canada Soccer and Iran were supposed to play a game. That became a challenge.
Canada Soccer got in trouble for trying to arrange that, if I believe. I mean, among other things, Canada Soccer has gotten in trouble.
Yes, and once they close the Strait of Hormuz, you also want to take a look at it. Okay, we're going to switch from the arrivals at Pearson to the departures in Parliament, because as the government responds, they've got some big departures coming from the House of Commons. We have former Liberal Cabinet Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, who is finally headed overseas. We've been talking about this for a while. The Prime Minister has chosen the North Vancouver MP to be Canada's next ambassador to the European Union. The NDP is also losing an MP later this year. The party's only Quebec MP, Alexandre Boulerice, is leaving the federal party for provincial politics. Bob, what do you make of this? I mean, this is going to put a couple of more seats in play. Wilkinson will be gone, it seems, by June, July, is what he said earlier on the show. Boulerice, it depends on the timing of the Quebec election. And then there's Nate Erskine-Smith, and Avi Lewis is not going to run in any of these. What do you make of all these dynamics at play?
Well, first of all, I think it was a good decision to appoint Mr. Wilkinson to the EU. It's going to take on a much more significant role because of our efforts to diversify trade and to have a stronger relationship with the EU. He was a very competent cabinet minister. He didn't make the cut under Mark Carney. I'm not really quite sure of the reason for that, because there's Miss Diab, who made the cut, and
he could have been good in immigration.
He's a smart guy. And Mr. Look, I think that's a pretty safe Liberal seat. I think he won, with 59% or something like that. He had a big number. So that's a very safe seat for the Liberals, so I think they'll hold on to that. I'm not sure about Mr. Boulerice's seat, but I think it may be a Bloc Québécois.
No, Liberal.
Liberal? Okay.
Yeah, really? Liberals have a good shot at it because when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister, the Liberals tried to convince Mr. Boulerice to join the Liberal Party at that time. They made many attempts to convince him. It was not successful. It would have been, possible then because the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau was like almost an NDP government.
But he's also a separatist, right?
Also,
so that might have been an issue with
well,
Justin
I don't know.
Trudeau.
Liberals are their principles are pretty elastic.
But for Boulerice, maybe, like he's not a front runner. I think we can say that about Mr. Boulerice, but it is interesting to see him leave and the NDP go down to 5 seats.
And already the Liberals are talking about, looking for a candidate, organizing in that riding, and it will be a fight between the Bloc Québécois and the Liberals, but the Liberals, I think, have the upper hand. In the last federal election, the NDP kept that because it was Alexandre Boulerice. Alexandre Boulerice got 42%, the Liberals 30%. So you could see, many people trying to go with the Liberals. And
it looks like Nathan Erskine-Smith is in trouble. They may not win the Ontario Liberal leadership, so he'll be around Ottawa.
Well, but he may still want to make the move to Queen's Park. Yeah. He may still want to try to run in that Scarborough Southwest because he's still seeking the number. But if Navdeep Bains gets in, as we fully expect that he will, that is an organizational machine that he's going to struggle with. Though Nader Smith
anyway, to your point on Avi Lewis, I think he's making the right decision not to run.
Yeah, there's a lot of downside risk to run and lose now.
Well, he's lost twice, and he wants to make sure when he does run in a riding, he's actually going to win this time. And there's so much that the NDP has to do in terms of raising money, finding candidates, getting him to meet members of the party across the country. I think he's well spent to do that, particularly because with only 5 MPs, you can't even ask questions in question period. You can't even be on any committees. So his time is, I think, far better spent trying to get trying to develop a relationship with the left across the country.
I just want to say, because you mentioned the number, I Googled it on North Van. No IRGC links, but 59.83%. The NDP came third at 4.24% of the vote. So you can see why,
I mean, that's where the NDP are at right now. They need to build back the brand. They need to build back the party. They need to build back the wallet. We saw in the by-elections that just happened in Ontario and Quebec, I think when the money comes, when we finally get to see how much the party spent, the NDP won't have spent very much money in those campaigns because they knew they weren't going to win it and they just don't have the money to spend. The BC riding is a little bit more difficult for Avi Lewis because his answer to why he's not running in Quebec was partly because he wants Quebecers to be represented by someone who's from Quebec. But Vancouver, that's where he's run before, so it's a little bit more difficult. But Jagmeet Singh didn't run for 2 years after he became the NDP leader, so this isn't unheard of. It's probably a smart decision, but it really is also indicative of just the trouble that the NDP are in. They're just not part of the conversation, even in a seat that they've held for more than a decade.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to say a few words on the departure of Alexandre Boulerice because it's going to be the end of a big chapter for the NDP, the end of the Orange Wave. Mr. Boulerice is the last NDP MP of Orange Wave. They're still alive in Quebec. Now he'll be leaving. And so...
Still elected, not still alive. They're not all dead. I just want to make sure. Okay, we're going into specials mode if we got that kind of a body count.
But for me, as a French reporter, I wanted to hear what the NDP in French was saying. I was going to see Mr. Boulerice. Now it's gone because Mr. Avi Lewis speaks a bit of French, but he's not at ease as much as Mr. Boulerice, obviously, and he cannot communicate the message with the Quebec color of the NDP. And that's going to be problematic.
But I wonder, JD, and I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on this. The message he is delivering, Avi Lewis, it is starkly more progressive and aggressive than what we saw from Jagmeet Singh. Public option grocery stores, wealth taxes, cap the price at the pump. There is a clear differentiator after being sort of lashed to the mast of the SS Trudeau because of the supply and confidence agreement. And what do you make of that approach?
It's true, but does it stick to the reality of ordinary Canadians? I'm not sure. When people are trying to save their jobs, trying to pay the rent, yes, maybe capping the price at the pump, but it may be fine for people driving big SUVs, but people trying to find the money to pay the rent at the end of the month, it's not going to help.
It might be more, though, Mia, about taking on big oil companies, right? Like, he is very clear that it's not I don't want to say it's an anti-corporate agenda in terms of all corporations, but it's certainly not a corporate-friendly one, right? And separating from the Liberals there.
And in fact, you actually might see more daylight between the NDP and the Liberals right now than we do between the Liberals and the Tories when it comes to policy, right?
Yes, especially on floor crosses.
And that's just not been the case. It was not the case under the Trudeau government. I mean, they had the supply and confidence agreement with the NDP. So Avi Lewis is trying to position the party to take on some of that progressive vote that they think is vulnerable for the Liberals. So politically, it's a smart move. But there are many other factors in play for Canadians right now. Affordability is obviously a key issue, but they also have they want stability, they voted in Mark Carney, they switched to him, they sort of seemed to believe in him, and for now, Canadians, a large proportion of Canadians anyway, seem to like what they hear, and the NDP message has not shown to resonate yet, but I think he's building the brand now for 3 years down the road.
And on the issue of affordability and cost of living, the NDP will have to compete with the Conservative Party. This has been the bread and butter issues for the last 2 or 3 years. So
the issue set will be the same, but the policy solutions will be very, very different.
It's very true, though,
right?
the policy. But talking about the issue is they have, competition, but the solutions, that's going to be...
But Canada's always had a strong left-wing voting bloc, and it changed under Trudeau and under Mr. Singh because they were unidentified. They just basically were the
Trudeau
same
attacked
party.
hard to the left, right? They became Social Democrats.
Avi Lewis is articulate. He's putting out policies that will appeal to a lot of people on the left. I think he's got an opportunity, and we'll see how it goes over the next couple of years. But I think he has an opportunity to bring the party back. It may only be 12 seats of the next election campaign. The next time it could be 17. I mean, he's going to bring the party back, and I think there's a need for that voice in Canada. Somebody's got to speak out for people who feel that they're disenfranchised.
Yeah, in a weird move, this majority government actually gives him more time to do that. If it was a minority that we were heading to an election 6 months to a year from now, he would not have as much time. 3 years, he's sort of setting the table to have that time.
I've had him on the show twice since he won the leadership, and it's high energy, it's animated, and he's forceful, so he'll get attention. Right? Whether it gets traction, well, we'll see in a bit. Yeah. Look, we got about 4 or 5 minutes. I just want to go to the other big news this week, which, of course, was what the federal government did, the spring economic update. It shows an economy that's on more stable footing, but also increasingly a risk of stumbling as the world grows more dangerous and unpredictable. Bob, what do you make of what we saw there? Better than expected fiscal performance because of higher economic performance, and we seem to be on a bit of a track to maybe towards that this year.
Well, I think he could have reduce the deficit even more. And the reason I say this is that we don't know what's coming down with Donald Trump. We have no idea. And I would feel much better if there was more financial firepower available in case things go really badly in the negotiations with the United States and there are more job losses. And so I don't think he sent a nice message to the markets. They're still having big deficits, and the signature platform out of this, I think, was $6 billion for
skill trades.
That's a really good policy. But could he have found $6 billion elsewhere in the government to be able to fund this? He probably could have.
It's a $73 barrel of oil in that document, and
Oh, yes.
1.1% growth, and we're well above both of those targets right now. So we'll see where it changes. But, Mia, it is strange to be looking at a fiscal update where a $68 billion deficit is seen as progress. Because if there's one promise the old Liberal government kept, it was to run deficits. They beat it and they exceeded it.
One of the comments I made on Tuesday when we were in the lockup was that it's sort of odd to say that it's only $68 or $69 billion or $67 billion or whatever it was.
Whatever it was, yeah.
Because the word only in front of 67 billion should just not be used. Like, it's a lot of money. Most people can't even fathom that. When you said it was 4 to 5 minutes for this panel, I thought, well, that's about as much time as we should spend on that document, because that's about how much sized it was. It was petite. And that was pretty much the only real policy that we hadn't seen. I mean, they announced the Sovereign Wealth Fund the day before, so that wasn't new on Tuesday. There was not a lot of detail. Yeah, they saved $11 billion, but we don't actually know how.
Yeah.
It's just trust us, we saved it.
Yeah, some spending didn't get out the door, and the economy was better.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know, with the barrel of oil, and they're expecting maybe more revenues. It's sort of reminding me a little bit about sort of the Chrétien Liberal days, where they would tell us at the beginning of when they put out the budget that they would have a deficit or a surplus of a small amount, and by the end of the year it was like $10 to $20 billion more. Because that, you know, it's the kind of liberal math I was used to.
Which is why we have private sector forecasts now, so you can't be accused of fudging the economic numbers.
I agree with me. I think the Carney government is acting like the Chrétien government, lowballing revenues, overestimating the deficit. I think in October, when the final numbers of the fiscal year of 2025 and 2026 come in, I think the deficit will be lower than what we saw, unless they have
There's
more
big
spending.
defense spending and stuff they got to deal with, right? So that could cost.
I'll give you the reason why. It's the first 11 months of this year, according to the Fiscal Monitor, we had a deficit of $25 billion. And with 1 month, you would have like $50 or $40 billion of expenses. That's a lot of money going out the door in 1 month. So the end results will be known in October, and I expect the deficit to be lower this year and in the coming years. I think it's a Chrétien trick, if I may say.
And they'll claim it's good fiscal management, which is what they claim to speak to.
Yeah, just on that, I wonder, and look, we've only got 60 seconds left, but like Bob, the deficit was the goal of the Chrétien Martin team. The economy is the goal right now. So they're going to be judged more on what they do on the economic side and the job side than on the deficit side, it would seem, you know? Yeah.
Well, I disagree with you. You know, Chrétien focused on the deficit, but he also focused on the economy. And he realized that if you got the deficit down, it would create more money for the private sector to be able to invest. And this is, I mean, I just think that he could do a lot more in terms of controlling federal spending. And we have to spend money on the big items like in the defense and on those kind of issues for sure, but surely there's other ways you could make savings, and I think it would send a better message to international markets.
Yeah, and look, we got to say goodbye, but to Mia's point, putting only in front of $68 billion, like to wrap a billion, you know, I saw someone say, what's the difference between a million and a billion? Basically $1 billion. That's the gap. That's how big $1 billion is. On that note, all of you billionaires can say goodbye. Robert Fife, Mia Rabson, and Joël Denis Bellavance.